tremendous amount of power. Moving that cleat backwards, the power curve stays flat for a long time. So if we do have foot pain, one of the things that we can do is slide that cleat backwards to get it off of that nerve center. So again, if any of you guys are having any experience with foot pain or knee pain or anything, after we sit here today, please come see me, because I might be able to help you alleviate some of those issues. Before we leave the bike fit, are there any questions on the fit? Is there anybody that has any current issues with their bike?
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a distinction between men's frames and women's frames, and is it really something worth paying attention to?
That's a great
question.
I forgot to mention. Trek was one of the first companies to actually devote an entire section in their engineering to women. And this one actually happens to be the women's specific bike. And what typically a woman is typically a woman is longer legged and shorter torso than a man. Often I'll get two come in together to buy two bikes, and they will be on totally different bikes based, and they're both the same height, just because of their relationship with their torso and their legs. So what Trek has done, and when we first started fitting bikes for people 10 years ago, before people were doing this, typically we'd have a woman's bike, and they'd be riding it like this, because this part right here, the top tube, was too long for them. It was very uncomfortable for them to ride. So what Trek has done is shorten the top tube. They've narrowed the bars. They've changed the reach of the levers. They've shimmed these so that it's closer, easier to get a handle on. They've changed the seat, because women have a different anatomy than men do. And they've changed the seat design. Matter of fact, they've spent a lot of time on seat design. Good story. I went to Trek World for their release of their new models. One of the things they have found on a seat is that, kind of like the old Brooks saddles, which were leather saddles, and you rode those saddles for a long time. They were very uncomfortable for the first year, but they were leather, and as you sweated, they just kind of conformed to your pelvic region, and they became the most comfortable seat that you could own. So Trek gave, and there's been a lot of talk about the cutouts in the seat, a lot of those kind of things. So Trek gave the University of Wisconsin a grant to develop seats. So they did a bunch of testing. And what they have found is that instead of the cutouts, if the seat fits the pelvic region and makes contact all the way through, then it dissipates that weight over the entire saddle. So that's why we have this device right here, which is the butt measure. And what happens is you'll get two little indentations where your sit bones are, and from that we have a variety of saddles with different sizes that we can size the saddle to your pelvic region. And that makes a pretty big difference, because you're either not riding like this or you're not riding like this. So the saddle size is as important as the saddle design. And what a lot of people are doing now, they're doing a dual density saddle, where the saddle is firmer on the outsides of the saddle and softer in the center. You can see this one's got just a little bit of a cutout, so as you sit down on it, it alleviates the pressure in those most sensitive areas. So that's another thing that they do, that they design. And they gave, Trek men got the first saddles out, and they gave them to the women in the engineering section. God, this is the greatest saddle in the world. They finally developed a saddle that works for us. The women threw it away. They went, that just didn't work for us. So that's when they came back to the drawing board and started using women over at the University of Wisconsin to design the saddles, and they've come up with some difference in the design on the saddles for women. So thanks, I didn't mention.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Bill? I don't know if you're going to include this later, but the types of pedals, because I think a lot of our novices are going to have probably toe clips, just to review
Sure.
your pedal options?
Sure, I think it is in there when we talk
Okay,
about
that's fine.
what to take on the ride, but we might as well talk about it right now. I really do not like the toe clips, the straps and the boxes. The reason is that oftentimes with a tennis shoe, the pedals are, what you can see on these, the pedals are somewhat serrated, and the tennis shoe gets caught on that. So you come up to that stop sign, and you go to stop, and you just can't get your foot out. So on our bikes here, some of our bikes actually come with those, and we actually take them off because we don't want somebody to get their foot stuck in them as they come up to a stop sign. So what we recommend is when you first get your bike, that you ride just on a flat pedal and get used to the shifting, get used to the brakes, get used to just the dynamics of your new bike, and then go into your pedals. And there's just tons of different kinds of pedals. A lot of people on their first bike will go with a mountain style pedal. And the reason that they do that is because they're easier to walk in. Let me grab different kinds of shoes real quick. I got them up in the front. Be right back.
Let's get up this. I'm going to run around. It's another 45 minutes.
All right, here's the 3 different types of shoes that we have. This one is the mountain style shoe. And it has the cleat sits down in the center of the shoe. And it allows you, because it has this raised walking section, to be able to walk easily. I commute in this style pedal, and a lot of our recreational riders will use this style shoe pedal combination. Because you can get off the bike, you can walk, you can go, like if you're doing a Tour de Cure or the Reston Century or one of those, you can get off and walk around in the little rest areas, in the food stops, and those kinds of things. So this one becomes a very popular, versatile shoe combination. The one that we recommend mostly is the Shimano. It's just like what's in most mountain bikes and in your spin classes as well. Two-sided entry, which means that you can get into it from either side. They're on display behind you. Now, if there's any questions afterwards, we can go into that with a little bit more detail as well. And this is the road style shoe. You can see that it's smooth on the bottom. And what happens is the cleat fits on top of that, so that it makes it very difficult to walk, especially like on tiled surfaces. It becomes real slippery, real slip. Most of them will have a walking pad on them, but they still are slick to walk in. The difference, the advantage of it is that because it doesn't have the sole on it, they're much lighter. And it's easier if you think that you're out for a century ride and you've got, of course I'll exaggerate, but if you've got an extra pound on that pedal and you're turning it over between 80 and 90 revolutions per minute, and you're doing that for 5 or 6 hours, that's a bit of a weight difference that you have to pick up and push down, pick up and push down through the entire ride. So that becomes the advantage of having a road style, and you guys can pass them around and feel the difference between the two if you want. They're much different in their way. The other shoe that's worth mentioning is the triathlon shoe. The triathlon shoe is really nicely ventilated. I mean, obviously it's meant to be put on wet. It also, most of them will have a little retention clip in them, so that in your transition area, your shoe looks like this. Whether it's on the bike or on the transition area, however you choose to get in and out of it, it's in an open position like this. The advantages are that, of course, it's very ventilated, it has drain holes in the bottom, it has a lot of opening, but it does not give you the support that the road shoe does in the foot box area. You know, you can see that's got two straps and a retention ratchet. You know, and that is my go-to shoe when I'm out on training rides. Is I always wear a road style shoe because it gives my foot better support. But then again, on race day, triathlon shoe is what I go to. We can talk more about pedals too if anybody has specifics on their pedals. You know, like what's the difference between speed play? What's the difference between look? What's the advantages of the two of them? They're all on display again back there, so once we finish up, I can kind of go through that as well. Bike choices. I'm just going to briefly touch on bike choices, and not so much from a triathlon versus a road style bike, but what happens as you progress up the chain of bikes. This is our entry-level bike. This is what is the 1 Series Trek or the Lexa Series Trek, whether the Lexa being the women's specific. It's an aluminum frame with a carbon fiber front fork. And what this one is it's a tubular frame, and you can see the welds here on the front of the bike. An aluminum bike is a good bike. It's a light bike. It's a good material to ride. It was my first bike. As a matter of fact, I trained for my first Ironman on an aluminum bike. Today, I don't think I would ever attempt that again, knowing that the advantages of carbon fiber. But an aluminum frame bike is, the way I describe it to our customers, aluminum's like a tuning fork. It's metal. So when you hit something, like that, those road vibrations are brought through the frame. That's why we put carbon fiber in the front fork. The first point of contact with anything on the road is your front fork, and so we put carbon fiber there. Well, why is carbon fiber different than the aluminum? Carbon fiber is a fabric. It's a weave. Instead of being a metal, it's like a piece of fabric. So as that energy comes into it, it's dissipated. And a lot of people think that they're using carbon fiber to make a lightweight bike a very fast bike, and that's really not the case at all. It is, in many cases, an aluminum bike can be lighter. A lot of our criterium racers are racing on aluminum bikes because it's short distances and the ride quality is not as important as the stiffness and the lightness of the bike. So as we move up the line on our bikes, I'm just going to stick these two right behind you. This one here is the next step up. This one gets the hydroform aluminum tubing instead of the round tubes. It has where the tubing is kind of almost triangular shape, so that as it comes into the head tube, it gives it a lot more strength in the head tube area, and you'll notice that the weld quality is much better.